Talk on the record 456.
Mr. Hawk, given your statement in your affidavit at page 3 at paragraph Arabic 16 that we've already discussed, is it your testimony today that once you identified a photo that you were told was that of Timothy Matouk, that you believe the two individuals that you saw on January 12, 2010 was Tim Matouk and JoAnn Matouk?
No.
When did you see, I thought you testified earlier that today you still believe one of the individuals bore a strong resemblance to JoAnn Matouk. Did you not testify to that?
Yes, I did.
All right. Is it your opinion that you're unsure who the individual was that bore a strong resemblance in your eyes to JoAnn Matouk?
Yes, I'm unsure who that person is.
But you're dead set certain that you saw Tim Matouk that night,
I
correct?
believe so, yes.
Which of those two individuals did you observe on the 12th for a longer period of time?
The first man?
First man. All right. Did any of these photographs that you were showing in the 1-800 law firm have any names on either the front, backside, or edges of the photos?
I don't believe so, no.
So you were verbally told that the person you identified was Timothy Matouk,
Yes.
and you were verbally told that by which of those present at that meeting?
Not certain.
So it could have been Solomon Radner,
Yes.
could have been AK,
Yes.
could have been Michelle Romain,
Yes.
could have been all of the individuals that were there that day.
Yes.
Now, I just want to spend a quick second revisiting this meeting, which we know you were there on the 19th, because I really doubt Katie would notarize something for a date that was not accurate. And we also know that you saw the photographs before you signed the affidavit. When you were asked to come to 1-800 Law Firm, were you told it was to review and sign an affidavit? Were you told you were going to have a photo lineup? Or were you told just to come on out for some other reason?
I believe it was for the affidavit.
And so when you got to the office and looked at the affidavit, I'm assuming that sometime before they asked you to sign it, they surprised you with this, for lack of a better term, photo lineup. True?
Not really a surprise.
Well, did you know in advance of arriving at 1-800 Law Firm that you were going to be asked to look at various photographs to identify possible individuals you may have seen on the 12th of January?
I don't believe so.
So, surprised or not, the first time you were aware you were going to get, for lack of a better term, the opportunity to participate in the photo lineup was after you arrived at the law office, correct?
Yes.
All right. Did you at any time ask to speak to an attorney that you could retain before participating in this photo lineup?
I don't believe I retained counsel, no.
All right. Which of your sketches, Exhibit 3 or 4, was of, in your opinion, Timothy Matouk?
3 or 4? 4.
4. All right. With respect to the statement that you gave to Grosse Pointe Farms on January 19th, your written statement, can you tell me which, if any, of the photographs included any individual that had darker features as you've described, as hair, eyes, complexion, 6 foot or under, weight about 200 pounds or less? How many of the 5 photos depicted individuals that looked like that?
Not certain.
Uncertain. Did any of the photographs depict individuals with olive type skin, olive colored skin?
I don't recall.
Well, how many of the 5 photos depicted individuals with light brown hair?
I'm not certain.
How many of the 5 had men with light eyes?
I don't recall.
How many of the 5 photos depicted men with, in your words, quote, high shave line, unquote?
At least one, the one that I picked out.
Just the one that you picked out?
At least one.
Well, how many more? That's what I'm asking.
I'm not certain.
Is it true that there was only one with a high shave line that you were showing?
Not sure.
Not sure. Would you recognize the photographs today if they were produced for you to look at, that they were indeed the photographs you were showing at 1-800-LAW FIRM?
I believe the
All right, the photograph that you picked out as being someone you saw at the scene that night, in the photograph, how was that person dressed?
I think it was a suit and tie.
Suit and tie. Were any of them in the lineup that you were shown wearing long dress coats?
I don't believe so.
How many of
Sir, if I
the,
get the answer. I believe so.
I don't.
Thank you.
were any of the 5 photographs depicting men who were all in shirts and ties?
Not sure.
Did Michelle Romain say anything to you during your review of these photographs?
No.
Did Kelly Romain say anything to you when you were being shown the photographs?
I don't believe Kelly Romain was present.
Did Michelle Romain exercise any body language that you perceived when you were looking at the photographs?
No.
Did any of the lawyers exercise any body language?
No.
Did Solomon Radner at any time make any statements while you were looking at the photos before identifying one of the photos?
No.
Did AK make any statements to you while you were looking at the photographs before you identified one of the photographs as being someone you saw that evening?
No.
You at no time ever saw the woman on January 12, 2010 leave the break wall, correct?
Correct. She sat motionless.
You at no time saw her physically abducted by anyone on January 12, 2010, did you?
I'm not certain if what I saw was an abduction or not.
Did you see either of these men place arms or hands or any portion of their body upon the figure you saw seated on the break wall?
No, I don't believe so.
And likewise, did you hear any of these gentlemen make any statements to this person on the break wall as you drove by with your window down?
No, I didn't speak and I didn't hear them say anything.
I'll pass the witness.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Hawk. My name is Chris Rayiti. I represent Grosse Pointe Woods and the Grosse Pointe Woods defendants. I just have a few questions for you. First, do you recall speaking with a reporter for the Grosse Pointe Times sometime in 2012?
I don't think so.
Do you know a woman named Kay Michelle Moran who writes for the Grosse Pointe Times?
Michelle Moran, I'm familiar with her.
Did you ever speak to her about this case?
I may have. I don't think I spoke in depth with her.
So when she cites a confident or an anonymous source in her story on January 16th, 2012, that's not you she's talking about? She didn't talk to you about that?
Depends what she said. I'm not sure if it's me or not.
Well, here's what it says.
Okay.
As he slowed down, the witness said one of the men had his hands in his coat pocket as if he was holding a weapon, and he waved the witness to go on with the hand in his pocket. The witness said the men he saw were clean-shaven white male, were a clean-shaven white male with light brown hair and light-colored eyes, about 245 pounds, 6 feet 2 inches tall, and a dark-skinned man who appeared to be Middle Eastern descent with dark hair and dark eyes, roughly 185 pounds and 5 feet 9 inches tall. Both men looked, quote, well-heeled, unquote, said the witness, with long, dark cashmere coats. He said he was also able to get a partial license plate number for one of the vehicles. Did you provide that information to Ms. Moran?
I believe I did, yes.
Okay. And everything when you provided that information to her, was everything you said to her true and accurate, as you remember back in January of 2012?
Yes.
Do you remember telling Ms. Moran that there were 3 cars parked in the right-hand lane on the lakeside of Lakeshore Drive that evening?
I don't recall that.
So if Ms. Moran's article that she wrote for the newspaper, for the Grosse Pointe Times, indicates that you told her that there were 3 cars parked in the right-hand lane on the lakeside, a car you later learned was Romain's was hemmed in by the 2 other vehicles, one of which was a black sedan. You didn't tell her that?
I don't believe so.
So if we talk to Ms. Moran and she's got, do you recall if Ms. Moran took any notes of your discussion with her? Well, let me back up. When you met, do you recall meeting with Ms. Moran?
I don't.
How do you know Ms. Moran?
She's a public figure who's a journalist for the paper. I read her articles quite often.
Well, have you actually ever met her?
I've seen her at like city council meetings covering the council
Okay.
meeting. I don't know her well.
Well, isn't it true that, it is true that you've spoken to a number of reporters about this case, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And do you recall speaking with Michelle Moran about this case?
I don't.
Do you recall being, excuse me, at the site of the incident on the 2-year anniversary?
I don't recall that.
Do you recall earlier when you were talking to Mr. DeGrood, you mentioned some, I think you called them veiled threats that you received that caused you to be concerned for your safety and well-being?
Yes.
Okay. And just so I'm clear, my memory, correct me if I'm wrong, the veiled threats you said you perceived was one by Mr. Van Tiem, is that how you say his name? Van Tiem?
Yes.
And the other was when you spoke with Officer Shalhoub at Grosse Pointe Woods, is that correct?
Yes.
And those veiled threats are why you went and spoke to the FBI, is that correct?
No, I think that occurred after I spoke with the FBI.
Okay, that was actually my question, because my recollection of your testimony earlier was that you spoke to the FBI because you were concerned for your safety. You didn't, did you recall testifying that way earlier in the deposition?
Yes, I do.
Okay. What caused you to feel concerned for your safety such that you went to the FBI?
It's one of the exhibits, the tar on the rearview mirror. My vehicle being tampered with.
Okay, so that alone is why you went to the FBI?
Also, the newspaper article that was published in January 2012 that falsely claimed the FBI and Michigan State Police were involved in this case.
What article is that?
An article written by Kathy Ryan.
And who's Kathy Ryan?
She's a journalist for the Grosse Pointe News.
Okay. So help me understand this. Because a journalist for a Grosse Pointe newspaper or publication wrote a story stating that the MSP and the FBI were involved in this case, that caused you to be concerned for your safety?
I have a master's degree in communications. When I read the article seemed bogus. I went directly to the source, to the Michigan State Police, to ask them if the article was correct or not. He sent me to the FBI. The article stated that the FBI had investigated the case and cleared the case. When I spoke with Special Agent Atkins, he said, "I don't even know what you're talking about. This is the first time I've heard about it. Can I borrow your newspaper to read up on the facts? I don't know what you're talking about." I showed him in the article. Here it mentions the FBI. Here it mentions Michigan State Police. So there was a huge conflict between what the article stated and what the authorities were telling me. That caused me concern.
What the authorities were telling you? So you did some investigation on your own?
No, I didn't.
Then why did you go? I guess I'm missing something. You read an article that says the FBI cleared the case. You go to the FBI to find out if they in fact cleared the case, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you're doing some investigation of your own, correct?
No.
How is that not an investigation? Explain it to me.
I went to the FBI and asked them if the article was correct or not.
Why?
It seemed it wasn't accurate. It seemed it was a bogus article, a bogus report. It said that they based the suicide theory on footprints leading down to the lake.
I'm sorry, who did?
In the article,
Mm-hmm.
she wrote, the police based their suicide theory on footprints, women's footprints leading down to the lake.
Okay. So then that caused you to go to the FBI to ask them about it?
That, along with the article mentioning the FBI had cleared the case, Michigan State Police had cleared the case.
When was this article?
I believe it was January 18th, 2012.
Were you quoted in that article?
I don't think I was quoted.
Were you mentioned? Either by name or as the anonymous witness?
I don't think I was quoted by name. There may have been a brief reference to me, but I'm not certain if that's who she was referring to.
And this was January, okay, so when did you go to the FBI?
January 2012.
January what, though? Do you recall what day? Well, let me ask it a different way.
Approximately the 20th.
So it wasn't the same day that you went to Grosse Pointe Woods to file the report about the tar on your side view mirror?
No, I don't believe it was the same day, no.
How many times did you visit the FBI?
Once.
Okay. I just need some clarity. My understanding is previously you testified that when you discovered the tar on your side view mirror, you went to talk to the FBI, who sent you to the state police, who sent you to Grosse Pointe Woods. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct.
Okay. Clarify for me.
I went to the state police first.
Okay.
What I think Robertson at the state police told me was he wasn't interested in making a report for me. And that if it was such a serious case, that I should go tell the FBI. I told him right then and there, that's a great suggestion, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I drove directly downtown and was interviewed by Special Agent Atkins that afternoon.
Okay. And then, so how is it that you came to go to Grosse Pointe Woods to report the tar on your car?
Special Agent Atkins telephoned me, told me, there's a guy at Grosse Pointe Woods, a detective you should talk to. His name's Shalhoub. Call him up and make a report.
And did you? Did you call up Shalhoub?
No, I didn't.
How far after you spoke with, okay, so Robertson called you at home after after you had met with him?
Special Agent Atkins.
I'm sorry.
From the
Apologies.
FBI telephoned me on my cell phone.
Okay.
Told me to contact Shalhoub.
How far after you had met with him? You went downtown initially, right, to the FBI?
Yes.
Okay. How many days after you went there originally to when he contacted you?
A few days. 1 or 2, 3 days.
So then you go down
I
to.
think it was January 23rd when he called.
How can you be so certain?
I saved it.
Okay. All right, so January 23rd.
You want to see it?
No, I'm okay. So January 23rd, Atkins calls you and tells you to go down and file a report with.
Sorry.
Sir.
Okay. It's. Where's your phone?
It'll
It's in
play
here.
music, Sean.
We all set?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so then on the 25th, you go down to Grosse Pointe Woods, correct?
I'm not certain the date.
I don't know which exhibit it was to the.
That was. It says 25th, yes.
You got it there? Exhibit 16, I believe it is.
That is what exhibit, Mr. Hawk?
16.
Okay, so on the,
16.
so exhibit 16 is CR number 12 0000662, which is a Grosse Pointe Woods case report, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So you waited a few days before you went, after you spoke to Atkins, you waited 2 days to go down to Grosse Pointe Woods.
Yes.
Is there a reason why you didn't call to try to set up an appointment directly with Detective Shalhoub?
I had never been contacted by either Grosse Pointe Woods or Grosse Pointe Farms.
Well, that wasn't my question, though. You just testified that Special Agent Atkins told you directly that you should speak with Detective Shalhoub, correct?
Yes.
Okay, is there a reason why you didn't speak directly to Detective Shalhoub?
I didn't have faith in the integrity of the police.
So why file a report at all?
So that there would be something in writing. There would be a record of my vehicle was tampered with.
Okay. And then, if I'm correct, the next day, on January 26, 2012, you were contacted by Detective Shalhoub, correct?
Yes.
Had you ever met Detective Shalhoub before?
No, I hadn't.
Did you meet with him in person or on the phone?
He didn't oblige the courtesy to meet me in person. He called me over the telephone 2 years after I made my initial statements, my witness statement form to Grosse Pointe Farms.
Okay. Let's not get confused here. I represent Grosse Pointe Woods, not Grosse Pointe Farms.
Yes, sir.
Detective Shalhoub works for Grosse Pointe Woods, correct?
Yes.
You went to Grosse Pointe Woods to make this the statement we're talking about, Exhibit 16, correct?
Yes.
Had you ever made a statement to Grosse Pointe Woods prior to that?
Don't believe so, no.
You don't believe so? Does that mean maybe you did and you don't remember, or no, you did not?
In regard to the car being tampered with?
No. The car being tampered with, ever. Have you ever made a report to Grosse Pointe Woods other than this CR number that we're talking about here, Exhibit 16?
No.
Okay. So besides this Exhibit 16 we're looking at, you have never made a report to any law enforcement official at Grosse Pointe Woods, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So why is it that you expected Grosse Pointe Woods to contact you 2 years later, after you made a statement to a different law enforcement agency?
I didn't expect them to contact me.
Okay, so what courtesy did you expect them to extend to you? You said Detective Shalhoub did not extend to you the courtesy of meeting with you in person. Did you ask for that courtesy?
I was a witness who came forward.
No. Answer my question. Did you ask him to meet in person?
I am answering.
Did you ask, it's a yes or no question. Did you ask Detective Shalhoub if you could meet in person?
No.
Okay, thank you. How long did you talk to Detective Shalhoub on the phone?
I believe it was about 20 minutes or so.
And did you talk to him about the tar on the mirror?
I don't believe so. I recall the conversation. If you'd
Okay.
like. Shall I?
Sure. What did you talk about?
The phone rang. I saw it was from 343 number that was coming from the Woods Municipal. He identified himself as Detective Shalhoub. He asked me if I saw the two men I saw the night of January 12th, 2010, could I identify the men? If I saw them or a photo of them. I said, yes, I could. At that point, his demeanor completely changed, and he said, why were you making false statements to the FBI? Which I knew I hadn't. So I became suspicious of Shalhoub. And I said, why now? Why 2 years later? I thought we were going to have this conversation 2 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were done. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's when he stated, it doesn't make any sense that that woman was murdered. Why wouldn't they have murdered you already also? At that point, I became very concerned, because as I've stated before, I thought I had given my statement in confidence. Confidentially.
To whom?
To the police,
Which police?
Grosse Pointe Farms. My name hadn't been released in the newspapers at that time. How would the killers know who I am unless
Okay, go ahead.
unless somehow my confidentiality was broken? How on earth would that statement is ridiculous?
And this was in January of 2012. When was it? When do you recall? When was the first time you spoke to a reporter about this?
I believe it was the WWJ, the radio report, the lady reporter who worked
And when was that?
Summer of 2011. And I demanded to not be identified, to not have my voice broadcast.
Okay, who was the? I'm sorry, you gave me the name of a reporter earlier that I think it was Ryan.
Kathy Ryan from the Grosse Pointe News.
And did you speak to her anonymously?
I remember she was at the same meeting with the WWJ reporter. It started off, it was quite curious because she started making statements about the facts of where the cars were positioned and what had occurred on January 12th, 2010. I let her speak freely for a few minutes, and then I asked, I thought I was here to be interviewed, but you're making all of the statements. At that point, I think she stopped, and the WWJ reporter asked me to clarify where the cars were parked and so on.
And when was that, you said?
2011.
Okay. So at least as early as 2011, it's your understanding that people knew you were a witness? People outside of law enforcement?
A few people in the media, but I made it very plain that I did not want to be identified. I wanted to remain confidential. They say it on the television every day. 1-800-SPEAK UP. You can remain anonymous. If you see something, say something. That's what I did.
Okay. You mentioned that it's your testimony that Detective Shalhoub asked you why you were making false statements to the FBI. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what statement he was referring to?
No.
Okay. Did you tell the FBI that that the various law enforcement departments in the Grosse Pointes would not take your statement?
I think you'll have to ask the FBI. I told them quite a lot.
Well, I have you here. I can't ask the FBI that right now. I can ask you. Did you tell the FBI that the law enforcement agencies in the Grosse Pointes, whether it's the farms, the woods, the shores, or the city of Grosse Pointe, that they would not take your statement?
I don't believe so. I turned in a statement in
Right.
January 2010.
Okay. All right. And just so I'm clear, your testimony here today is you did not tell this reporter from the Grosse Pointe Times that there were 3 cars on Lake Shore on that evening, leaving January 12, 2010?
I don't believe I said that. She may have misinterpreted me. The third car was my Jeep.
Well, just so I'm clear, is it your testimony here today that there were only 2 cars, and it was not 3 cars, 2 of which had the Romain vehicle hemmed in?
Exhibit 15, my diagram.
I understand that.
Is
This
this
is from,
My diagram from January 2010, over 6 years ago. It remains the same information.
okay, so if
Today.
this, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
This is the diagram I drew over 6 years ago.
Yes, I understand that. That wasn't my
None of the
question.
information that's contained here has changed in over 6 years.
My question, Mr. Hawk, was simply, did you tell Kay Michelle Moran that there were 3 vehicles parked along Lake Shore that evening? Did you tell her that for a news article that was posted in January of 2012?
I don't recall telling her that.
Okay. Does that mean you may have told her that and you simply don't recall it?
No, I don't think I told her that. She may have misinterpreted.
Okay, so if we get.
I mean, I'll be absolutely clear now. There were 2 vehicles. If she wrote there were 3 vehicles, she made a mistake in the article, or it was misinterpreted. I
So
don't
there
recall.
wasn't 3 vehicles, then, is what you're saying? One of them didn't have, there wasn't one parked in front of the Lexus.
No, I don't believe so, no.
You don't believe so, or there
No.
wasn't?
Just as I stated, my diagram,
No, I understand.
It's the
I understand
same.
what your diagram says. I'm asking you, though, do you have an independent recollection of this, or are you just going by your diagram?
my recollection is 2 vehicles.
Okay. You also met, we were talking about other investigators that you had met with on behalf of the plaintiff's family here, the Romain family. Do you recall testifying regarding Mr. Randall and all of the meetings you had with him, correct?
I just met him once.
Okay. Did you also met with Salvatore Restrelli, is that correct?
Yes, last summer in
Okay.
2015.
And tell me about that meeting. Where did you meet?
Okay, I'd like to. Met him at St. Paul's Church.
Okay.
I explained where the cars were parked. I think I also mentioned the police theory of suicide. He told me that he was a sheriff in Florida for 25 years and that there was, I think his exact words were, not in a million years would a routine patrol officer come across a locked car in a legal parking space and assume the woman walked down to the lake and jumped in and commit suicide. He said, not in a million years.
All right. And were you provided any documents at that meeting?
And I believe he's a CSI investigator as well. No, I wasn't.
Okay. Who was at that meeting?
I think Michelle, Kelly, and Salvatore.
Okay. And to your knowledge, is he still working on this case?
I'm not certain if he is or isn't.
Okay. What about Scott Lewis? How many times did you meet with Scott Lewis?
I didn't meet with him. I spoke with him over the phone.
And what did you tell Scott Lewis?
I believe I said I read the article that you were quoted in. I'm very concerned. You claim it's a murder and a cover-up. Is that true?
You were asking him that, or he's asking you that? I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
I asked him.
Okay. So I want to get back to this, anonymity piece that you were talking about earlier. You wanted to remain anonymous, but now we've at least identified 5 people outside of law enforcement that you've talked to about this case, correct? At least 5.
Who are the 5?
Well, we got Salvatore Rastrelli, correct?
Yes.
Scott Lewis, correct?
Yes.
William Randall, correct?
Yes.
The reporter that you mentioned earlier, Kelly Ryan, was it Kathy Ryan?
Kathy
correct?
Ryan. She was at the meeting with the WWJ, the radio reporter.
Okay, and and the WWJ reporter as well, right?
Yes.
And then you also spoke with the attorneys for the Romain family, correct?
Beginning in 2011, yes.
Okay. So there is at least a half a dozen people we just identified that you've been talking to about this, but you still expected to remain anonymous.
Investigators and journalists that I told before I spoke to them, I would like to remain a confidential source. Do you do that? Yes, we do. Okay, then we can speak. They were professional investigators and journalists. Many journalists do keep sources confidential. I told every journalist I ever met with or spoke to, I want to remain confidential. I don't want my name to be exposed. When Hank Winchester mentioned my name on broadcast news, that was a little bit shocking. On the other hand, I realized eventually my name may come out.
Do you have the same phone you had back in 2010? Is that the same cell phone?
I have the same model phone.
Do you save your text messages?
No, I don't.
Do you have any text messages on that phone right now?
I believe maybe 10.
So you are in a habit of going through and deleting your text messages as you receive them?
Yes.
Do you have any text messages on there right now from Michelle Romain?
Don't believe so, no.
How about any from Mr. Radner?
No, I think he's only texted me once ever. And that was in regard to my wanting to remain anonymous.
Earlier you testified that when you were driving, on the evening of January 12th, 2010, you were driving, approaching the parked vehicles, and you turned on your high beams, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. Why did you turn on your high beams?
because I wanted to get a better look at what was going on.
Okay. So when the first man walked out, was he looking directly into your high beams? Were you shining your lights in his face?
No, he was staring at me.
How could the two be mutually exclusive? If you're driving straight at him with your high beams on, wouldn't your headlights be right directly in his face?
Momentarily, yes.
Well, what would stop that moment? Why only momentarily?
because he walked around behind the car and motioned me to drive through. And when I turned into the other lane, the headlights would point.
Okay, so how long were your headlights in his face?
5-10 seconds.
Okay, and so during those 5 or 10 seconds, you were looking at the license plate, correct? To see if there was an X?
No, I made note of the license plate first before he came around the car.
Okay, so for
Then
5
he came around, stood in front of the plate, and put his hand here as if he was going to identify himself. Like the council had mentioned earlier about Good Samaritans, that was part of my belief that night. Maybe it's police or Good Samaritans, he's going to identify himself. Normally, they would say, "Sir, can you please continue on?" Not reach in the pocket like you got a gun and wave you through. So I felt like that it was a police officer and he wanted me to not stop. I didn't know what they were in the middle of. At the time, I thought maybe it was a police action.
So you saw him for about 5 seconds when he was standing in front of the vehicle, or behind the vehicle, correct?
5 or 10, but as I pulled by, it almost came to a complete stop and we faced each other directly, and I saw very clearly his features and his face.
What lights were out there at that time? Were the cars behind
The
you?
headlights, the street lights,
There were street lights there?
yes.
So it was a well-lit area?
Yes, with the car lights and the street lights together.
Well, there wouldn't have been any, if you've already pulled past him or alongside him, there wouldn't have been any car lights on him, right? Because you already testified there was nobody behind you.
There was nobody behind me.
Okay, so what lights were illuminating this gentleman's face?
The high beams that you had just mentioned.
No, but Mr. Hawk, you just testified when you pulled alongside him. So unless you have high beams coming out of your passenger door, there's no high beams on him. Your high beams are going forward.
Okay,
So what lights were illuminating his face?
street lights. And it wasn't completely dark.
So when was it that you when did you realize that the woman on the brake wall, that you believed she was JoAnn Matouk?
When I met Michelle and her sister, I could immediately see the resemblance.
When was it precisely when you're driving? Okay, so we're at the cars on that evening, and you're driving which direction? North up Lakeshore?
Yes,
Okay, and so this figure is sitting on a brake wall to the east, correct?
yes, facing the lake.
Facing the lake. Did she turn to look at you?
She didn't move at all. She didn't
Okay.
move one bit.
Were her eyes open or closed?
I don't know.
Was her mouth open or closed?
I don't know that either.
Was she wearing glasses?
I don't know that.
Okay, so when you met Michelle Romain, was she slumped over?
Michelle?
Yeah.
No.
So what was it about Michelle that resembled this slumped
was
over
actually
figure?
more-
Wait, let me finish the question.
Okay.
What was it about Michelle that resembled the slumped over figure on a wall whose face you couldn't see?
It was more so Michelle's sister Kelly, who resembles her mother more. As I've stated before, the feminine shoulders, males have more square shoulders usually, and some women have round shoulders, feminine shoulders. And the color of the hair, the type of the hair, was quite evident to me that
Are there a lot of
was
Middle Eastern?
a very striking resemblance.
Are there a lot of Middle Eastern people in Grosse Pointe?
I believe there's quite a few, yes.
So there's probably quite a few people who resemble Michelle Romain in the Grosse Pointes.
JoAnn. I'm sorry.
No, no, I'm right.
That resemble Michelle? She's a unique. She's unique to me.
Okay.
I don't think she has a twin.
All right. So it's your testimony here today that you believed or came to realize that in your mind, the woman sitting on the break wall, slumped over, whose eyes you couldn't see, whose face you couldn't see, resembled Kelly Romain because she had feminine shoulders and black hair.
Round shoulders, similar
It's
to
a
her
yes or
mother.
no question. Is that what, I mean,
Yes, the dark hair, the color of the hair,
dark
the
hair and
type of the
slump
hair, and
shoulders,
the
and
body
that's it?
shape.
That's it. Dark hair, slump shoulders, and
Yep, an exact
Okay,
match.
thank
Very,
you.
very striking resemblance.
I will be sure, I'm not even gonna ask that question. You know what? I'll pass the witness.
Thank you. Mr. Hawk, how tall are you?
Can you just put that on?
Mr. Hawk, how tall are you?
Approximately 6 feet.
Well, are you 6'1"? Are you 5'11" and a half? I mean, I presume you know your height, right? What's your height?
About 6 feet.
Okay. Let's go to your statement, Exhibit 10. Got it in front of you?
The affidavit?
I have Hawk Deposition Exhibit 10 as your statement to Grosse Pointe Farms.
Okay, yes.
Okay, first page. You wrote, and you actually
That's the light colored one or the dark colored one?
I don't think it matters
The
what
witness
color it is, it's
statement.
the same statement.
Okay, one's marked 10, one's marked 15.
Okay, I'm using the one that's marked 10, but they're identical except for maybe the shade, but it's still
And the
this.
number of pages.
I'm just focusing on the 2 pages of Exhibit 10.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, as I understand it, this statement was authored on January 18th, the night before you turned it in, correct?
Yes,
Okay. You turned it in on the morning of the 19th, approximately 9 o'clock a.m., because it says that up on the statement, correct?
yes.
And you have no reason to dispute that you turned it in on that date and time, correct?
I turned it in first thing in the morning, yes.
And you knew when you authored this statement on the night of the 18th that it was a very, very important statement because you had feelings of suspicion as to what you observed back on January 12th of 2010, correct?
Yes, it was suspicious. A woman sitting at the break wall with 2 men and approaching me in an aggressive manner. I felt
I'm just going to move the strike as being non-responsive. The question simply is, sir, let's just focus on this. We'll get out of here. We're almost done, all right? You've been here a long time. I want you to just focus on my question and just answer my question, okay? Agreed?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So let's get back to this statement. When you authored this statement, you knew that this was very important to get this factually accurate, given the best knowledge and recollection you had at the time that you authored it, right?
Yes.
Right. So you took your time to write this statement, didn't you?
Yes, I thought before I wrote it down.
Correct. And let me ask you this. Did you go through any drafts where you actually wrote it out on a separate piece of paper, then transpose it onto this form?
I don't believe I did, no.
Okay. But you took the time to think about what you saw, right?
Yes.
Correct? And carefully write that down on this piece of paper, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And when you authored this, this was based upon your 100% honesty as to what you remember back on January 18th of 2010, correct?
Yes.
Right. There's nothing in here that's based on guessing or speculation, right?
I wrote down what I knew I saw.
Okay, all right, so let's go through this. And really what I want to focus on is when you get, you have the 2 vehicles, you see in the middle of the first page, you wrote, quote, 2 vehicles, 1 dark, paren, navy blue, close paren, and 1 unknown color, paren, parked in the right lane, paren, nearest lake, close paren. We're impeding traffic, period. You see that sentence?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, and as of January 18th, that was your recollection, wasn't it?
No, Jensen told me to write navy blue.
Okay, so you knew
And he
one.
also told me to write 4:30 p.m., which I didn't write because I didn't think that was accurate at all.
All right, but so it's your recollection that there were two vehicles. One was dark, correct?
Yes,
And navy blue is the comment that Director Jensen had you write? That's your testimony?
he told me to write navy blue and 4:30 p.m.
And did he tell you to write anything else about the other vehicle?
No,
So the statement, and one unknown color, was the best of your recollection as of January 18th, wasn't it? Because that's what you wrote after thinking about it for about a half an hour, right?
it was a metallic vehicle.
That's what you wrote after thinking about it after half an hour, correct? Correct? Second vehicle. Let's do it this way, Mr. Hawk. You do not identify the color of the second vehicle, correct?
Correct.
You do not identify the make of the second vehicle, correct?
Yes,
You do not identify the model of the second vehicle, correct?
yes,
Okay. Let's go on to the next sentence, and I'm going to quote it now. Quote, as I passed, I saw two men. The first man was Caucasian, over 6 feet tall, and about 240 pounds or more. I read that correctly, correct?
yes, that's
All right. Now, you wrote this, again, 6 days after the accident, given your best recollection. You knew that the first man that you saw was Caucasian, because that's what you wrote, correct?
yes,
You knew that this man that you saw that was Caucasian was over 6 feet tall, because that's what you wrote, right?
he appeared to be taller than 6 feet, correct?
Yeah. He appeared to be taller than you, correct?
Yeah,
Okay. And that he was over 240 pounds or more, correct?
yes, it, with the heavy coats on, was,
Okay. This question is not intended to insult you, sir. It's just I'm here doing my job.
yes, sir.
But has your weight remained the same consistently pretty much from 2010 to the current date?
My weight?
Yes, sir.
No, it varies.
Do you remember how much you weighed back in January 2010?
In the winter, I usually gain weight. I about 240.
So you're like the rest of us. We gain weight in the winter
Yes.
here in Michigan, don't
Yeah,
we?
certainly so.
Okay, so this man, this Caucasian man, the first man, was taller than you, but approximately the same weight as you, correct?
I believe so, yes.
And you have a specific recollection, correct?
Yes,
Okay. Now your sketch has what I would consider a knit hat on this gentleman that you sketched out as the first man, correct?
yes.
And whether we look at Exhibit 4,
First man.
Exhibit 4 and Exhibit 7 are the first men, correct? They're sketches of the first man, correct?
4 and 9
Okay, excuse me, 4 and 9. Looks like-
and 7.
Okay, so 4, 7, and 9 are the various sketches that you've identified who's been drawn by the people you testified to, but they all represent the first man, correct?
Yes,
Okay, so let's just look at your sketch, since that's your work. Exhibit 4,
okay.
you in fact identified the hat as a knit cap, didn't you?
Yes,
What color was it? Do you remember?
dark brown or gray.
You're not certain, are you?
I'm
Dark
certain-
brown or gray are two different colors. So therefore, you're not certain what color this knit cap was that the man number 1 was wearing, correct?
I'm not certain of the exact color
Thank you.
of the cap.
What else was this man, this first man, wearing besides the knit cap?
He was dressed in a, you're familiar with the navy pea coat?
Yes, sir.
It was, or a cashmere, a long cashmere coat.
Well, there's a difference there. So you tell me, which one do you remember him wearing? The navy pea coat or a long dress cashmere coat? Because a pea coat, in my opinion, is not a long coat. Is it?
I thought it is. It extends to about the knees.
No. To me, a long coat goes at or below your knees. A pea coat is above the knee.
Okay, I'd say the first, the dress, the cashmere style.
Okay. Cashmere can come in different colors. What color was this particular cashmere coat that this man number 1 was wearing?
I believe it was black.
Are you certain? It was dark out. Or navy blue? Or another dark color?
I saw it as black.
Okay, so you're certain it was black, correct?
That's what I saw.
Okay, I'm just asking you what you saw, sir. All right. If you look at the ears on this drawing, I'm not certain as to whether or not these are just a rough sketch of ears or headphones over the ears. Because you see how you got a line over the top of the skull cap connecting ear to ear?
Yep.
Does this depict earphones or headphones?
No.
Okay. This is just your rough artist skill, correct?
Yes, it shows the lack of facial hair and the,
I just want to focus on what I'm questioning you on at the moment. I don't want you to volunteer any information yet, sir, please.
Okay.
Okay? All right, down below underneath the sketch on the left-hand side, you've got little eyes. What do you mean by little eyes?
light eyes.
Oh, excuse me, light. I read that wrong. And what are light eyes? What does that mean?
Compared to the second man who had darker colored eyes, first man I believe had lighter colored eyes.
Okay, so you can't identify the color of man number 1's eyes. You just know that they were lighter in color than the color of man number 2's eyes, correct? That's your testimony, right?
Yes, I believe.
Well, is it your testimony or isn't it?
That
That's
he
what-
had
that's what
lighter
you-
eyes?
Yeah.
Yes.
So you don't know if light eyes are blue eyes, correct? Or green eyes, or any other light color eye, correct?
There's eyes that are light, that are green, that are blue, that are
Any other color of light eyes that would qualify for your definition of light eyes?
hazel,
Okay, anything else?
gray.
Anything else? Is that the list of your light eye definition?
Yes.
Okay. Light brown hair. That means a lot to a lot of different people. Can you give me an idea, let's say on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 is really light blonde and 5 is really dark, where on that scale light brown hair, as you witnessed on this night, falls?
What was your last word? Oh, where does it
Where on
fall?
the scale the light brown hair from 1 to 5, white being light, 1 being light, 5 being dark?
3 or 4.
Okay. Do you remember what color shoes this person had on? Man number 1?
Yes.
What?
He was wearing ankle-high boots.
Ankle-high boots, which means what? It goes over the ankle? You know, like work boots? Is that what you're talking
The
about?
type of boots you would wear in the winter that zip up, and they're
Okay.
approximately parallel to the ankle.
Okay. Do you remember what color?
I believe they were beige, or what would you call it? Like
Beige or what?
like a sheepskin color.
Beige, tan, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Or maybe a dark cream white or something like that? depending on what kind of sheep you're looking at?
More beige or tan.
Okay. You use the term to describe this man as Caucasian. See that?
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
It's self-evident, isn't it? Caucasian.
Could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, sir. I'm just trying to understand your definition.
Well,
Let me do it this way. To me, you're telling me it means a white male?
that's correct, yes.
Okay, then let me ask it this way, sir. You're how old right now?
I'm 50 years old.
Okay, so we're going back roughly 6 years ago. You're 44 years old back at this time frame, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. You know what the term ethnicity means, do you not?
Ethnicity?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Are you able to give us any description and what type of ethnicity this Caucasian male was?
No?
Okay. Now, let's go on about the second man. He had darker features, hair / eyes / complexion. So if I interpret this correctly, and that's what I'm trying to do here, is make sure I understand what you mean by this. His hair was darker than the first man, right?
Yes.
Was it brown or black? Or don't you know?
I believe it was black, but there was a touch of gray that I noted creeping up, like many of us
Okay.
have.
On a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the darkest, 1 being the lightest, well, how dark was this black hair?
4.
All right. Eyes. What color eyes? Do you know?
They seemed dark, like a dark brown.
Okay. Complexion. Darker feature complexion. What do you mean by that? You're looking at your lawyer because his complexion is a little bit darker than yours.
I am. And I also noticed it seemed he had a fresh tan, a dark complexion and,
Okay.
and tan.
So do you know whether or not this person was just a person that was tan, or their ethnicity was such that their complexion was darker?
From my observations, it was both.
All right. Are you able to identify what you believe this second man's ethnicity was?
He looked Middle Eastern or South American to me.
Okay. And you go on in this sentence, as when you're talking about your description of the second man, that he was 6 feet or under, correct?
Yes, here I have about 5'9", about 185.
And you're referring to your sketch, which is Exhibit 3, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And this sketch was done, if I remember right, what, a week after your statement? 2 weeks after your statement? It's been a long deposition. Help me out here.
I believe it was the first week.
Okay. So after you authored your statement, Exhibit 10, you decided to sketch this out, and upon further reflection, you've got this second male at 5'9", approximately 185 pounds, correct?
Yes,
Okay. On your sketch, Exhibit 3, underneath the diagram, you've got dark hair / eyes, long, dark, quote, cashmere coat. Again, can you give me the color of that cashmere coat?
long, dark cashmere coat. I believe it was black.
All right. So the first gentleman's coat was black, the second gentleman's coat was black.
Yep,
All right, but it doesn't say that on here, does it? It just says dark, correct? Just look at the sketch, sir. That's what I'm focusing my attention on, and I'm
Yeah,
directing
yes,
yours.
that's
Okay,
what it
let's
says.
just focus on the Exhibit 3. That's where we're at right now,
Okay.
okay? Then underneath that, you got the term, look, quote, well-heeled, close quote. What do you mean by that? What's well-heeled, as you've used the term on this exhibit?
I guess the opposite of a vagrant, a homeless person. It looked like somebody typical, like
As
somebody that would worship at Grosse Pointe, at St. Paul's Church in Grosse Pointe.
Okay. to borrow some language from my co-counsel across the table from me, would you consider that to be someone who's a sharp-dressed man? Well-heeled? It's the closest I'm going to get to being a DeGrootism. Is that what you mean by well-heeled, sharp-dressed?
I meant he looked like he like a gross pointer would dress.
Okay, that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, sir. And I've grown up in that community my entire life. So how does a gross pointer dress?
Somebody attending church at St. Paul's,
So this,
they usually dress well in cashmere coats.
okay. What color was his fedora? Do you remember? Yes or no?
I believe it was a dark gray or black.
Okay, you're not certain as to which one, dark gray or black. One of the two. Right?
Yes.
Okay. Then you wrote down on your sketch, Middle Eastern / South American. You're not certain as to which, correct? Correct? You don't know which one he was, if he was either, correct?
Could have been either, yes.
Could have been either. Excuse me. On the second page of your exhibit where your sketch is, can you put that in front of yourself, please, sir?
The witness statement form, page 2?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, have
Thank
it.
you. We're looking at your now your diagram, okay? And as I understand your testimony, as you got closer to these vehicles with your brights on, these two gentlemen walked from a position on the side of each of the vehicles to the vehicles to in front and back of the vehicles as you've drawn, correct?
Correct.
So where was your car in relation to these two vehicles, given where the position of the men are as drawn in this diagram? Are you between the two vehicles? Are you next to the first, next to the second, past it, what? At what point in time, in using your vehicle as a position, or strike that, where were you as you've depicted this drawing?
I was in my vehicle, in my Jeep.
But where was your vehicle in relation to these two vehicles and these two gentlemen?
At first, I was in the lane nearest the lake,
Right?
and then I drove around the cars, switched lanes.
But before you drove around the first car, it's your testimony that gentleman number one stood in the position that you've got him diagrammed at on your drawing here, correct?
Yes.
And was gentleman number two also in that position as diagrammed at the same time one was in the position that he's in? Or was two still moving into position, if you remember?
I believe as I passed the Lexus, the second man came over
Okay.
into that position. I believe he was standing on the curb.
And how long of a look did you give at the second man?
Long enough to get a good look at him.
Okay, and that is how long, sir? How many seconds?
10 seconds.
Okay. Now, you've got these two vehicles directly across from the St. Paul's driveway. See that?
Yes.
And this is the driveway that runs adjacent along the church that takes you to the back of the church where the parking lot is, correct?
Yes.
And is it your recollection that that's in fact where these two vehicles were stopped, directly across from that driveway as you've diagrammed it?
Yes.
Who do you currently live with, sir?
I'm single.
Do you live alone?
Yes, I do.
Back in 2010 of January of that year, were you living alone or were you living with someone?
About the same, lived alone.
Have you ever been arrested for any type of criminal offense?
No,
I therefore presume you've never been charged with any criminal offense, correct? Or have you?
no,
You have not been charged, correct?
correct.
Okay. Once you passed those two vehicles and you continued on your way, you said you looked back. Remember that part of your testimony?
As I was passing the Lexus, I looked back to the woman.
Okay, so your looking back that you described in your testimony earlier is as you're passing the Lexus. That's when you did that, correct?
Yes,
Okay. Was that the last time you looked back?
yes,
You didn't look in the side mirror or a rear view mirror to get any further look, correct?
correct.
Did you accelerate your vehicle as you, once you got past the Lexus and you completed that last look back?
I looked back at the woman and then I made eye contact with the second man.
And then what? Because you were moving, you continued to drive, right?
Yes,
And then you accelerated on your way back to your house, right?
yes,
You drove Lakeshore to Moross, correct?
correct.
Took a left on Moross up to Kercheval, correct?
Yes,
Took a right on Kercheval, correct?
yes,
And you went home.
yes,
You didn't turn around, didn't do a U-turn, didn't go anywhere back to look at that scene despite your concern. Correct? Could have made a U-turn, could have went up Moran, could have came through Grosse Pointe Academy's lot.
Objection calls for speculation.
I'm not done, counsel. You can make your objection when I'm done. Please, I'm almost done here.
I,
You could have done other alternatives if you were that concerned to circle back to somehow to see what was happening. Correct?
Objection calls for speculation.
And what he could have done? Go ahead. Sir?
I did what I felt was most appropriate. I got a description of the two men in the vehicle, and I continued on my way. I'm not a police officer. I don't have the power to roll up on somebody and start investigating, and that's not the type of person I am to start trouble.
But you could have stopped and you could have observed from a safe distance away, couldn't you? Could have, couldn't you?
As I've stated before, I thought the first man was a policeman with a weapon. I wasn't going to stop and interfere.
All right. But as you sit
With
here
the
today,
police.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I wasn't going to stop and get into a conflict with a police officer.
Okay, but you didn't know if he was a police officer. You made it. You've speculated here today, as you did back at the time this happened, that you thought it was a police officer because it looked like an unmarked car, even though it didn't have an ex-municipal license plate, and even though there was no other indication this gentleman was an officer other than his motion for a gun, as you
And
testified.
when he went to reach, I thought he went to reach for his badge to identify himself, which I thought he was going to do. Then he put his hand in his pocket and waved me through.
Okay, but on your way home, you pass Kirby, don't you?
Yes,
And what is on Kirby between the streets of Grosse Pointe Boulevard and Kercheval on the right-hand side?
the municipal building.
And what's in the municipal building? The Grosse Pointe Farms Police Department, right?
Correct.
And you could have stopped there and tell them what you just witnessed, correct?
I did. On January 18th, I came in and
I'm
made...
talking about the night of January 12, 2010, on your way home when you were most concerned. You could have done that, and there would be no threat to your safety, correct?
I was most concerned after I learned from news reports that the woman was missing.
I'm talking about the night of January 12, 2010. Lakeshore to Kirby to Kercheval, a stop at the police department, identifying or communicating what you saw. You're a communications major, could easily have done that, and then you can go on your way home. That would have not posed any threat to you, would it? You could have done that.
I'm not certain that statement's true.
Okay, but you could have stopped and you could have made your report,
I
correct?
stopped long enough to get a description of the men in the vehicle, and I reported that.
But you didn't do what I'm suggesting you could have done, which probably would have been really smart of you, wouldn't it? You just saw it, something doesn't look right, I'm going to go to the police station and I'm going to report it. But you didn't, did you?
No, I didn't. I
No,
did
you
what
waited,
I thought was most
you
appropriate.
waited 6 days, and then you came forward, correct?
I came forward the first week of,
You waited 6 days, and then you came forward. You didn't come forward until January 18th. If my math is right, between the 12th and the 18th, that's 6 days. Right? You waited 6 days before you came forward. Right?
true,
Okay.
but I did come forward.
Nothing else is pending. Let's move the strike. Have you been told what Timothy Matouk has testified to as to where he was and what he was doing on the night and time in question? As you sit here today, do you have that knowledge, sir?
Of his testimony?
Yes.
No.
You don't know where he was or what he was doing on the date and time in question as you sit here today. According to him, whether it's testimony through an affidavit or whether it's testimony through a deposition.
I don't know the man.
That's not my question. My question is, do you have the knowledge, however acquired, as to where Timothy Matouk was on the date and time in question when you claim that you saw him in front of St. Paul's Church, as you've described? Do you know?
Can you re-ask?
It's a pretty simple question,
Do
Mr.
I know
Hawk.
where he was that night?
Do you know what his version as to, strike that, do you know what his testimony is as to where he was the date and time in question when you claim you saw him down in front of St. Paul's?
No.
Don't you think that's important to know?
For a witness? No.
Do you know what his employment was on that date and time in question?
I believe he was a Harper Woods detective.
And how do you know that? Who told you that? Or did you do your own research on him?
I think it mentions it in the news article.
Okay, so let me back up. You have never done any independent research on Timothy Matouk, have you?
No, I don't know that man.
Okay, so anything that you may have learned from about Timothy Matouk is what you have read in various newspaper articles about this case? Is that a fair
Yes.
statement?
Yes.
Do you have any recollection of being told anything about Timothy Matouk? So let's start with Michelle Romain. Has she told you anything about Timothy Matouk? And if so, what has she told you? Has she told anything about Timothy Matouk? Let's start with that. Yes or no?
I think she told me that that's her mother's cousin.
What else? What information has she shared with you about Timothy Matouk other than it's her mother's cousin?
Nothing.
Nothing? How about Mr. Radner or AK? Has either one of them shared any information with you about Timothy Matouk? And if so, what?
Well, I don't think they shared any information.
Other than your lawyer who currently represents you at the moment, has anybody else ever shared any information with you about Timothy Matouk? And if so, what?
Judge Metry told me that he knows a lot of important people.
What else did Judge Metry tell you about Timothy Matouk other than he knows a lot of important people?
That's all.
You've lived in Grosse Pointe your entire life?
I was born in Detroit,
Okay.
lived in Warren, Michigan.
Okay. When did you move to Grosse Pointe?
Second grade.
Okay, so most of your life you've been living in Grosse Pointe.
Yeah, I was overseas for 4 years.
Okay. At any time, have you ever had any run-ins with Timothy Matouk where he was on the job as a police officer or a detective for Harper Woods?
I don't know that man. I don't.
Okay, so
No.
he's never pulled you over, right?
No.
Never wrote you up for a ticket, never had any official dealings with him as a police officer or a detective, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct. Besides the night of January 12th.
Well, that's your belief, isn't it?
It is my belief, yes.
Mr. Matouk, Timothy Matouk, is going to testify in this case, Mr. Hawk, that on the night and time in question, he was a member of a four-man jurisdictional task force known as the COMET, which stands for the County of Macomb Enforcement Team. And on the date and time in question, he was conducting surveillance in the city of Warren.
Is this a question or is this you testifying?
Counsel, let me finish. And that as a member of that surveillance team, date and time in question, he was conducting surveillance with his fellow COMET officers. With that understanding, and that he was nowhere near St. Paul's Church or Grosse Pointe area. He was in the city of Warren from the hours of 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. With that understanding, are you certain you saw him down at the church?
Yes, I believe the man that I saw was Timothy Matouk.
Okay.
Hang on, it's stuck over here.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm not going to have these marked unless I have to. Mr. Hawk, can you identify this person?
John?
I'm asking you. Can you identify that person?
Looks like John Matouk.
Are you certain?
Looks like that to me, yes.
Okay, let's have that marked, please. What would be the next number?
17.
17. We'll just put it down, face down. 17. Can you identify this person?
No, sir.
Don't know who that is?
No, sir.
That'll be Exhibit 18. Can you identify this person?
Not sure who that is.
I'm going to put them all side by side. And just for purposes of the record, from your right to your left, you got exhibits to be marked 17, 18, 19. Do any of those individuals resemble any other individual that's in front of you, in your opinion?
Do any of these three resemble,
Any of them in front of you, correct?
do they resemble each other?
Yeah.
These do a bit.
That would be 17 and 19, correct?
Seventeen, 19.
Well, these are, they're going to be marked exhibits 17, 18, 19. So just for purpose of the record, you said these two, meaning the first one on your right and the last one on your left, correct? Correct? That's your testimony. You think
I mean,
this one
there's-
and this one, they resemble each other, correct?
Well, they,
That's your testimony, right?
even he does a bit.
Okay. So it's your testimony.
Bald.
Go ahead. Say it again. I'm sorry. I cut you off.
This man's balding. He has a full head of hair. He has a receding hairline.
Okay. Full head of hair on 17, balding on 18, 19, correct?
Receding on 19.
Yes.
Your testimony is 19 is receding, 18 is balding, correct?
Yes.
All right. Do any of these three individuals in front of you resemble the other man, man number 2?
Yes.
Which one?
What number is that?
That will be 19. You believe number 19, that picture depicts the gentleman that resembles man number 2, correct?
Yes.
Okay, let's have him marked, please.
Still the 22nd. Over here.
Yeah, that's fine.
Are there any?
Okay, Mr. Hawk, here's my next question about these photographs. You've identified Exhibit 19 as a person who resembles man number 2 at the scene, correct?
Yes.
All right, here's the question. Are you absolutely certain that the person depicted in Exhibit 19 is man number 2? Or is it your testimony that person resembles man number 2?
I'm not absolutely certain, but he does resemble
Okay.
the
Now,
second man.
when you're looking at number 19, you kind of put your hand over the top of his head, which I interpreted you were trying to envision this person with a hat on, the fedora that you sketched out,
Yes,
correct?
I saw the eyes and the face.
Okay. I want you to do that to exhibit number 18. And then ask you, with that in mind, does that person in exhibit 18 resemble man number 2?
He does a bit with his head covered.
Yeah, in other words, with a fedora on 18 and a fedora on 19, there's similarities there, aren't there?
Yeah, they both have dark eyebrows and dark hair and prominent bridges.
Okay.
Give me a sec.
Do you have a medical marijuana card?
Objection.
It's a public document. Do you have a medical
Not
marijuana
a
card?
public document.
It's a governmental document.
It's not a public document.
What's your objection, counsel?
The objection is, he's got a fifth, where this is a federal deposition, marijuana is still a crime in federal law, might not be in state law, but he doesn't have to incriminate himself.
I didn't ask him if he's using, I just asked him if he had a card.
That infers something else. So I'm advising not to answer the question.
You're advising him to invoke his Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination, correct?
If you want to file a motion, file a motion.
No, that's how it's done. You have to advise him to invoke his rights. You can't invoke it for him, as you did earlier. That's my point. Okay, we'll continue on. Has anyone, Mr. Hawk, in any way agreed to reimburse you for the attorney fees you're going to incur for your counsel for today's deposition?
No.
The 5 photographs that were shown to you by Mr. Radner's office, whether it was by Mr. Radner or AK, because my notes seem to indicate at various times you were shown by both of those gentlemen. If I were to ask you to go through and describe in as much detail as possible each and every person in those photographs, are you able to do that?
No.
All right, so we take that, we just step aside the photograph that you believe depicts Mr. Tim Matouk, and we focus about the other 4. Can you tell me anything about those other 4 photographs? Were they all Caucasian? Were they all either, what was the term that you used? Give me a second here. Yeah, European or South American? I'm sorry, Middle Eastern and South American? Do you have that recollection? Or were there 4 that were all, strike that. Do you have that recollection? Whether the other 4 photographs represented any, let's start with the term Middle Eastern. Do you remember if any of the 4 photographs showed any Middle Eastern looking people?
No, I don't.
You don't know? I couldn't hear your answer, sir.
No.
No what? No, they did not? Or no, you don't, no, you don't remember?
Could you repeat the question?
Okay. 4 photographs, not the one that you were identified as depicting Mr. Tim Matouk, but the remaining 4. Of those 4, did any of them, to the best of your recollection, depict any Middle Eastern-looking person?
I'm not sure. It was 2 years ago.
Okay. Same answer if I asked you as to whether they depict any South American-looking person?
Yes, same answer.
Same answer if I asked you if they depict a white Caucasian male?
I'm not certain about the other pictures.
Okay. And therefore, if we put a bunch of photographs in front of you, and they included the 4 or 5 photos that you were shown. Are you certain you could pick out the 4 or 5 photos that you were shown? Or aren't you certain on that either?
I could pick out the same photos.
Yes, sir, that you saw.
It was 2 years ago. I don't think I could.
Okay. After you saw what you saw on the night of January 12, 2010, there came a point in time that you had some communication with JoAnn Matouk, correct?
Yes.
Did you ever share with him what you witnessed, and by that you saw a person has a strong resemblance to JoAnn Matouk?
I believe I did tell him that I thought the second man was him.
And-
That
And
the
what,
second man looked like him, but when I saw John in person, it didn't.
all right, well, let me ask you this way. When you saw John in person, how many years was that after January of 2010?
When he delivered these handbills to my place of business, so I hadn't seen him in approximately 30 years.
Okay. So what you're saying is he delivered these handbills, I believe your testimony was somewhere around June of 2014, correct?
No,
When?
this year.
Excuse me, 2016. I meant to say that.
Yes, sir.
When in 2016? March or before March?
I think after.
Okay. Do you know what month in 2016?
I think May.
Okay. So in May 2016, Mr. JoAnn Matouk shows up at your art gallery. He delivers these handbills. That's the first time you've had a conversation with him about what you saw on January of 2010?
That was the first time I saw John face to face in over 30 years.
Okay. Did you have any phone conversations with him before that day, since January of 2010?
Yes,
And how many times do you believe that you talked to him?
half a dozen.
And what do you remember him telling you during those half a dozen phone calls as it relates to this case?
He was very emotional. It sounded like he was crying on the other end of the phone.
Crying?
Yes.
What do you remember him saying other than he was crying? What statements did he make? What did he tell you?
He said that his sister, JoAnn, was a very important person in his life, and he loved her very much. And he was devastated that she was no longer living.
What else did he say?
I think he said that he had some sort of lawsuit as well.
What you understood to be this case or a different lawsuit?
I think he said he was involved in a lawsuit. I don't think it was
Okay.
with Michelle's.
Just tell me what else he told you so I don't have to keep asking the question. What else did he say? So give me the whole story. What did he tell you during all these phone conversations that you haven't told us already?
That's all I remember is him talking about his sister,
All right.
saying what a wonderful woman she was, and he had been very close to her growing up, and she had done a lot of good things.
Did he ever make any statement to you that he killed his sister?
No,
Did he ever make any statement of denial that he had anything to do with her death?
I believe he told me that he took a lie detector test back in 2010 and that he passed.
Okay. What else did he tell you, if anything, that you can remember? Or is that it?
Just remember him talking very fondly about JoAnn.
Okay. You would agree, Mr. Hawk, would you not, that you don't have any first-hand knowledge that the two men that you saw on the night of January 12, 2010, by these two vehicles, were in any way involved with JoAnn Matouk Romain's disappearance, correct?
I don't have any first-hand knowledge.
Nor do you have any first-hand knowledge that these two men, or either of these two men, were involved in any way with her abduction and or death, correct?
I'm not certain because
We're talking about first-hand knowledge, sir. Either you have it or you don't. All you did was you saw them there. What happened afterwards, you don't know, right?
I'm not certain if she was abducted at that time.
Well,
that
first
I
of
saw
all,
them.
you don't know if she was abducted. You have no first-hand knowledge that she was, correct?
First-hand knowledge, no.
Yeah, you've got 1 minute of knowledge to use your own testimony. It took you about 1 minute to drive through there in the manner that you described, observe what you've observed, and you went on your way, and then you wrote your statement. That's all that you saw was 1 minute. So you don't have any first-hand knowledge that either or both of these two gentlemen at the scene abducted her, correct?
I'm not,
You can't consult with your counsel. There's a question pending. You have to answer my question. You don't have any first-hand knowledge that either or both of these two gentlemen abducted her, correct?
I'm not certain if what I saw that night counts as first-hand knowledge or not.
You didn't see an abduction, did you?
I'm not sure.
You don't know what you saw other than what you've described, but it certainly wasn't an abduction, was it?
Might have been.
But you didn't see it, did you? You're speculating at what might have happened afterwards, but you didn't see it, did you?
I saw the two men with the women.
You saw two men near the car as you described. You didn't see them hold her, grab her, remove her from the scene, or in any way try to move her out of position than what you saw her sitting by herself, not moving on the break wall, correct?
Yes.
Give you 1 second, sir.
It's a good sign, it means he's almost done.
I'm trying. The photos that you saw at the 1-800 Law Firm office, those were prints, correct? That wasn't on a computer or electronic device? Do you remember? Were they copy of prints? I mean, were they in a hard copy form in front of you, or were you looking at some electronic screen? That's the question.
I'm not sure. It may have been both.
What's your cell phone number, sir?
313-884-3033.
And what was your cell phone number back in January 2010?
The same. I've had that number for quite a while.
The number's never changed from January 2010 through today, correct?
Correct.
And has your provider always been Verizon?
I had the same number with a landline with AT&T before Verizon.
In 2010, you had a cell phone, correct?
Yes.
And that was the number, correct?
Yes.
And was the provider at that time AT&T or Verizon, if you remember?
When I switched from a landline, it went to Verizon.
Okay. But as of 2010, you had a cell phone that had Verizon as the carrier, correct?
Yes,
With that number, correct?
correct.
You don't know whether or not JoAnn Matouk Romain did or did not commit suicide, do you? You don't have any firsthand knowledge that she did or didn't, correct?
I read in a newspaper account.
Not what you read, firsthand knowledge. That's not firsthand knowledge. Correct?
Correct.
You don't have any firsthand knowledge that JoAnn Matouk Romain was murdered, correct?
Yes,
I'm
correct.
correct. Okay. I have nothing else.
And I have nothing either, and we have exceeded 7 hours. So thank you, Mr. Haddad, for allowing us to continue beyond the 7 hours and complete the deposition.
Well, I have some follow-up if Mr. Haddad would allow me the opportunity to do so.
Mr. Haddad.
I've been here longer than expected. I don't want to stay any longer.
That's fine.
Hold on. This completes the deposition off of record 648.